Governor McKee, in the past handful of years, the state has largely effortlessly built large-scale housing for everyone from COVID patients, and then in the case of the Army-Navy game, large-scale housing on a temporary basis for military people. Despite a long tradition of winter in New England, and at this point 3 or 4 years of conversation about the same subject with former Secretary Pryor and now the current interim secretary, you have communities who are fumbling literally at the last minute. Communities like East Providence and Woonsocket who are just starting to implement warming centers in the last 24 hours, despite 2 weeks' notice that this particular polar vortex was going to be an issue. Why? And at what point in time do we recognize that that housing in an emergency basis like this is a critical priority? I can tell you from personal experience that I've visited 5 to 6 homeless encampments a week, and
well,
we don't really
Tell me where they are, and I will go visit them. And if they're out tonight, let's do it tonight.
Governor, respectfully,
I'll take up the challenge. Tell me where they are. You and I can go out and see them tonight. Tell me where they are, where they're living outside in this weather. I'd be happy to do it. I would disagree with what you're saying. 2 years ago, we opened up the Cranston Street Armory because the hospital in Pawtucket had a maintenance issue. And then we opened up the Cranston Street Armory. I engaged, this is why I did it without an emergency declaration. I engaged the National Guard to actually be there on a regular basis over a few months to address that issue. And so yeah, we are responding to point-in-time situations if in fact we haven't put enough shelter beds in place. Right now, what we'll do, because of this issue that is coming front and center here, we are, out doing an inspection on our own to determine whether or not we, in fact, we are. But we're not going to engage the National Guard unless we actually need it. And I've already done it once, and I would do it again if, in fact, it's determined that we need to do something.
Governor, what is the status of Charles Gate?
You've got to get the mic.
Charles Gate?
Get the mic. Get the mic.
What is the formal status currently of the Charles Gate acquisition? Is it being used for homeless, and is it in fact up for sale?
Well, first of all, I think that part of the solution for us to own and control real estate where there's shelter beds, I believe what I was told is that that's families that are using that, unhoused families, and we're pleased where we are right now because that area, that building has been designated for family use.
Terrific.
You'll say fact check.
Okay, we're shifting gears, and I want to just thank again all the leadership that is working on this very pressing matter, which is of utmost importance to our administration. So I want to just address the subject of homelessness, which is certainly top of mind for many, especially in winter months. I want to begin the discussion around issuing an emergency declaration. Common misconception is that an emergency declaration would make more federal funding available for the situation, and it would not. I think we need to clarify many things that are reported, but individuals are providing information to the media that is inaccurate, and I think we need to kind of make sure that those issues are addressed. We have, however, directed an unprecedented amount of funding in recent years into addressing this complex problem. And I would also want to say that certainly the state has increased its investment in this issue on homelessness strategically over the last few years, and continues to do it. But we're not able to handle this whole issue on our own. So community leaders need to be really involved, which they are. And you see in East Providence opening up a warming center. By the way, our warming centers are triggered by the temperature and not necessarily any pressure that might be coming from We have, scheduled based on when we open up warming centers, and we're going to adhere to that. But because of the situation, I've directed that those warming centers stay open until such time as I deem that they are no longer needed. But we will be monitoring those as well, whether they're in East Providence with Mayor Silva, or with Socket, with Mayor Beauchamp, and Providence, with Mayor Smiley, just to name a few of the communities that are doing their part and adding to what we're doing in the state. The other area is the nonprofits, the churches, providers are all important to us, and we got to make sure that this effort, which has been one that's been around for decades, and we are now addressing, I think, in a very proactive way. We need to understand that they play a role in this, and we appreciate the contributions that we're getting from outside the state as well. I want to make clear that during, with our acting secretary, Deborah Goddard, that during the first week on the job, she met with the Coalition to End Homelessness, who runs the coordinated entry system for shelter beds, to hear about the needs and feedback. And when I heard that the executive director was looking to speak to me, which I didn't have any record of that, but I made sure that I spoke with her within 24 hours and had a conversation with Kim, along with the Secretary of Housing, as well as members of our office. So we can keep on looking for that, and I look forward to meeting with her when she becomes available, which is sometime in midweek next week, to ask her specifically about the same questions that I've asked over and over the last few years. So give me the list, share the list of the individuals that are on a waiting list, so that we can so that we can contact them and see where they stand at this moment in time. Also, certainly high priority, if there's any knowledge of anyone in the public outside of even our state or even the CES Department of Providers that know of young people that are potentially unhoused, that information needs to be handed directly to our housing office, or to our DCYM, or our office, and to the media. And if the media gets information about young kids that are unhoused, we would hope that that information would be delivered very quickly to our office. So I want to just say that the work that is doing is never enough, but the work that is going on right now is one that I believe that we're trying to make sure that anyone that's looking for housing, for a shelter, that is available. So we're looking at all facets of the problem, including evaluating the current setup for the coordinated entry system that helps place individuals in shelters, and the data collection that helps identify where beds are available. And I had a conversation with the speaker yesterday about this very issue, said that I was going to receive a letter, and I said, well, geez, we'll get the letter, and then we'll respond to the letter, and then we find out the letter actually was provided to the media before we even had a chance to look at it. And that's their call, the individuals in the House and Senate. But at the same moment in time, there's incorrect information in that letter. So one of the things was that it was mentioned that providers were laying off people because they didn't have the funds. The funds weren't up to date. Well, two issues on that. One is that we only received information from one provider that said that they needed funding because they were falling behind. We took care of that immediately. And then once I found out that there's some people who don't have contracts or have not been up to date on the funding, I made sure that those fundings would be made in advance for up to date, bring them all up to date, so that we're not in the winter months. And it mentioned in the letter that we were still behind on payments. Well, we've taken care of that. So people who potentially have want to share information, I would say call our office. Call the people who are actually running the operation. evaluation. We'll give you the information up to date. And then if there's still gaps in what we want to see, then of course, the media is an important role in this. I would say the Secretary's goal is to get get to the root causes of homelessness here in Rhode Island, so we can put strategies in place to not only shelter folks, but to reduce the need for temporary shelter by transitioning people into permanent housing. But right now, the most important thing that we can do is to have shelter during this time, and particularly during the cold time, so that we keep people safe. I see that as my main responsibility, is to make sure that we're keeping people safe. And we want to do everything we can do that, but to jump ahead to permanent shelter without addressing the issues that have to do with making sure that we have enough shelter, permanent housing, is a mistake. And we're going to continue to add to the beds. So you have two different levels of not only of the people that are in the that are being managed by the CES in terms of placement. We've grown, I think, from about 800 to almost 1,350 beds since I've been there. But that doesn't take into consideration the other agencies that are working, whether it's the Providence Rescue Mission, right? This is outside the CES issues. And there's multiple churches that are stepping up as well, doing the work. So when we look at the total number of shelter beds that are available, they've increased significantly. We are doing the analysis now to determine whether, in fact, there's enough in place, and if there's not, we have certain things in motion, that including the pallet shelter issue, which frustrates me as much. I've been publicly about that, and we've made additional phone calls today to the people who are managing that project, as well as the people who are doing the construction on that project, or whether it's to Rhode Island Energy. We're talking about transformers that are not there at the moment. We'll have more up-to-date information about that, that inquiry, and we'll share that when we get it. But I do want to give, there are providers, and many providers, and I'm not slating anybody by announcing, but Crossroads, Rhode Island, the Warm Center down in Wesley, the Diocese of Providence, the Amos House, as I mentioned, the Providence Rescue Mission, Open Doors. The list is long and long and long. So I want to make sure that the people who are following this story understand that there's very good people that are out there providing shelter, not only during the winter months, but year-round. So there are many good partners across our state doing this work, and I want to thank them. And the state funds nearly 1,300 shelter beds, as I said, and that is increasing as we open up these warming stations. And I repeat again, I made it known that we're not shutting that down, shutting any of those temporary warming stations up that's happened to open up in East Providence. And I was told there was a couple people there last night, so we'll let people know where these opportunities are. And we're not shutting them down until I say that they should be, that we should reduce that temporary shelter that's being put in place in warming centers. Places like East Providence, as I said, Pawtucket, and I mentioned the mayors, again, as we mentioned again, Mayor Smiley stepping up doing this, as well as Mayor Grebian, Mayor Beauchamp, and then, of course, Mayor DeSilva in East Providence, and there's many more. And we're meeting with the municipal leaders on a regular basis so that we can also make sure that we believe, what the count is in terms of people staying outside is one that we can kind of compare against some of the data that we're receiving. And that's happening in motion right now. And I know other people in the media are actually asking the same questions of people, of our police departments in different communities to make sure that we're doing everything we can to identify those who should be sheltered and that are willing to be sheltered are sheltered. So we have to do this together. Community-based, faith-based organizations, state agencies, municipalities, the shelter providers, and the homeless advocates. We're meeting with on a regular basis to make sure that we're doing everything we can because every life matters, whether it's someone that's homeless, somebody that's got an addiction, somebody that's the public safety that defends us every day, somebody in the fire that defends us every day. Every life in the state does matter, and we should be doing everything we possibly can to address that issue. So back to the issue of the emergency declaration. right? I understand that it could allow the state to waive some fire safety laws currently in Rhode Island statute. Unfortunately, Rhode Islanders know all too well that worst case scenario for neglecting fire regulations. And so at this point in time, we're going to continue to add shelter as opposed to create potentially, which I think would be argued by fire department leadership in the state, as creating another safety problem that as we're trying to solve an important safety issue. So I would also say that finally that if you have questions, we're more than willing to answer them. And if you have issues that where there's help and assistance that can be provided over and above what I just described, we're more than willing to include people to address this issue.
Governor, please wait for the microphone because not everybody can hear you, Scott. Go ahead.
Governor, are you reevaluating the state's contract with the coalition to run the CES system?
Yes.
And meaning what would you do?
Well, I think that what that could mean that it's managed by CES, but it's managed differently, right? Because you're seeing some gaps here. One of the ones that came up in the call with the executive director the other day, internally with our Secretary of Housing, was that there was very limited hours, in my opinion, on weekends. That should be corrected, right? I mean, it's just like we just talked about Rhode Island bridges. I mean, we put 24 hours, we basically put 7-day-a-week phone calling on the Rhode Island bridges issue. I think that, it can be cold on a Saturday and it can be cold on a Wednesday, so we should be, so there could be some adjustments there. And we're going to continue to meet. I have, I believe, an appointment set up with the executive director next week, and I'm going to be asking her, provide us the numbers, provide us the waiting list, provide us information, about children issues, and also talk about how we can provide, better customer service. And so I think that's the main issue there.
So it sounds like you're not satisfied with the way they're reporting data or sharing data with you?
Well, I think that we need to continue to stand up the information, right? So we're going to need to make sure that so if it is 684 people or whatever the number is that were outside in the cold last night, I think we have to verify that against putting resources in to address that. So yes, and this is not new news. I've been public about this for quite some time, that the information that comes from the advocates is different from what we're hearing on the ground. Not to say that we couldn't use more shelter, but also repeat, the answer here is more shelter beds. And that's what we continue to do, and I mentioned multiple times that I want to have more shelter beds than the need. And if we're not there yet, guess what? We're going to add more shelter beds.
Do you have an estimate of what the state is hearing as the number of people who are outside overnight at this time?
Well, we're getting information that we're even getting information from the people who are giving the information and saying it might not be totally 100% reliable, but we're getting information on how many available beds there are in the system on a daily basis, and we're not hearing zero. We're hearing that there are dozens, and back to the question that was asked about the management, the way it's going. Right now, if somebody calls at the CES, they reserve the bed for 48 hours. Maybe we should be taking a look at that and maybe reserving it for 12 hours, right? And so that anybody that might need a shelter bed that is responding in a way that they're showing up, then that might be also a piece there. But yes, in terms of the numbers, right now, and again, I don't want to lay out numbers that could be pushed back on. We're getting that numbers every night. Where the beds are depends on families, issues, right, or men or women. We understand that there's a particular type of shelter that needs to be provided in different circumstances.
Does the state have a different number for how many people are still living outside without access to a bed? I know you said that 600 something number you don't believe to be accurate. What is an accurate number?
Well, right now, I think that one of the best ways to take a look at that and is to go to the municipalities, go to their police departments. They know that area as well as anybody does, and I was a former mayor, and at that point in time, if you really circle the clock back, homelessness was not a state issue. It was a local issue, and it was one that was done through nonprofits, churches, municipal leadership. So, as a mayor or a municipal leader or a police chief, they know the numbers, and we'll get back to you on what they're saying, but I've done this before, and I've also asked, where are these encampments? I've gone out on a cold day with police, with housing advocates, to try to actually identify physically where encampments is. I haven't done that, I did not do that last year. I'll do that again this year, not because of the fact that there's a great deal of coverage on this right now. So we're going to have to go fact check at this point in time. Last year we didn't get a whole lot of this. This year we're getting a great deal more, and so now we're going to have to do our own fact checking to make sure that the investments that we're making are appropriate.
No.
Governor McKee, in the past handful of years, the state has largely effortlessly built large-scale housing for everyone from COVID patients, and then in the case of the Army-Navy game, large-scale housing on a temporary basis for military people. Despite a long tradition of winter in New England, and at this point 3 or 4 years of conversation about the same subject with former Secretary Pryor, now the current interim secretary, you have communities who are fumbling literally at the last minute. Communities like East Providence and Woonsocket who are just starting to implement warming centers in the last 24 hours, despite 2 weeks' notice that this particular polar vortex was going to be an issue. Why? And at what point in time do we recognize that that housing in an emergency basis like this is a critical priority? I can tell you from personal experience that I've visited 5 to 6 homeless encampments a week, and
well,
we don't
know where they
are.
are. Tell me where they are, and I will go visit them. And if they're out tonight, let's do it tonight.
Governor, respectfully,
I'll take up the challenge. Tell me where they are. You and I can go out and see them tonight. Tell me where they are, where they're living outside in this weather. I'd be happy to do it. I would disagree with what you're saying. 2 years ago, we opened up the Cranston Street Armory because the hospital in Pawtucket had a maintenance issue. And then we opened up the Cranston Street Armory. I engaged, this is why I did it without an emergency declaration. I engaged the National Guard to actually be there on a regular basis over a few months to address that issue. And so yeah, we are responding to point-in-time situations if in fact we haven't put enough shelter beds in place. Right now, we'll do, because of this issue that is coming front and center here, we are, out doing an inspection on our own to determine whether or not we are. But we're not going to engage the National Guard unless we actually need it. And I've already done it once, and I would do it again if in fact it's determined that we need to do something.
Governor, what is the status of Charles
You've
Gate?
got to get the link.
Charles Gate?
Get the link.
What is the formal status currently of the Charles Gate acquisition? Is it being used for homeless, and is it in fact up for sale?
Well, first of all, I think that part of the solution for us to own and control real estate where there's shelter beds, I believe what I was told is that there's families that are using that, unhoused families, and we're pleased where we are right now because that area, that building has been designated for family use.
Terrific.
You say fact check. You're giving money out like candy to all this organization, but they're not reporting back to you and to the media how they're spending the money. And second, let me correct you, was hundreds of beds available last night. I took part with me to a tour to different organizations and agencies that have beds available. People make this believable. You mentioned Providence Rescue Mission. Over 40 beds available last night. And the coalition to end homelessness, no panel with the city of East Providence. Only 2 people showed up last night to East Providence. If they had the list and the number, why didn't they took more people to the East Providence? That means stop wasting the money. Crossroad, that agency had to be closed and start from scratch, but they're not giving you information.
Yeah, so I think the information is really important. We're going to go out again and verify the data to our best of our ability and match up that data against what we're receiving so that, just like you said, resources are limited, but yet, in my mind, If there's a need, we are going to address it. But as you just said, you're getting the same information that we're getting at the moment, and that could change at any minute. So, and we need to make sure that we can have faith in the information and that it's reliable. And as I was saying before, we're responding to media reports that are coming from individuals that don't have the information correct. And so that what that does is that creates a lot more panic in some ways, especially for the people who need the help. I would just continue to say that we're doing everything we can, but it's a partnership, again, between our community leaders, and opening up those warming stations is a course of business since I've been in office, that we open it up, multiple warming stations that are in the system, that emergency management actually makes that call when we need to have that happen, and then we respond, and then we're fortunate to have municipal leaders that are willing to respond.
You're in a small agency, Providence Rescue Mission. I think it's $1.8 million budget a year. House 200 people every night or more. White Cross Road, other big agency cannot do the same thing. They ask for millions of dollars, waste the money, and you're giving it to them, and you're not getting a response.
Well, and again, one of the reasons why we held back some of the dollars that we're going to go to some of the providers was that we wanted contracts in hand that did exactly that in terms of accountability piece. And then I mentioned many of the providers that provide us with accountability to a degree that satisfies me. The main thing here is, look, we need shelter, and we need to continue to have shelter beds that exceed the need. And that's what I'm committed to do. And right now, entering this winter, I believe that we were there. If it proves out that we're not there, then we'll reassess and we'll make sure that we add additional shelter beds.
Perfect. Jake?
Governor, several lawmakers have called on you to declare that public health emergency that you talked about a little bit earlier, including Speaker Shikarshi on this morning's taping of Newsmakers. I know you addressed that a little bit ago. Is there a threshold that would make you reconsider?
Yeah, so we're going to weigh the merits and not the merits of it. I explained some of the reasons that are being expressed that we would waive certain conditions that have been put in place for really good reasons. If the General Assembly had a mindset to change some of that legislation and they felt as though that was the path that they wanted to take, at this point in time, we are open to consideration of any measure that makes sense. At this point in time, it doesn't fit the bill. So, but we'll continue to take a look at that. And I did have a direct conversation with the Speaker last night, and he asked me to try to make sure that available shelter beds would be somehow put out. That information could be put out in a broader way, so that that people could see it. The legislators that are concerned can see it. So we'll follow up on that, and that's the conversation I had with the Speaker yesterday.
I think we're good. Thank you very much, everybody.
Go ahead.
We're going to ask the
Oh,
department.
get a microphone.
One more.
You mentioned just how much money the state has poured into this issue already. We asked the Department of Housing last week, but have yet to get an answer. Do you know how much the state spent on 2024?
I know how much was budgeted, $30 million. I also know that the federal dollars on top of that, when Senator Reid announced $15 million plus that went into the very, providers that were expressing some concern in terms of what, of how we're operating. So we'll get a total. I think that's a really good question. But we need a total up. Not only the state's contribution, which is going to be reduced next year because some of that $30 million was one-time money, and we're going to certainly ring the bell that we got to be prepared next winter. But we also got to add in all the federal dollars that are going to that are being provided. As in addition, the Providence Rescue Mission, which I really love those guys, and I meet with them, certainly more than once a year to talk about the work that they're doing. Well, they're investing dollars too, so we'll get a sense on the total dollars that are being spent on shelter, and then we're going to continue to work on a housing strategy in the state of Rhode Island that addresses from shelter all the way to transition to low, to moderate, to fair market value. And that balance needs to speak to the 2030 plan we have, which means we want to raise incomes for the people in the state of Rhode Island, and we can't lose sight of that. And then we also need to raise personal wealth for the people that are in the state of Rhode Island, and home ownership is part of that. So it's a total all-in package that we have to be working with. Thank you very much for being here today.